Hello, my name is Wilson Tran, and the song you just listened to was Greed by Patrick Stump. I'll be lecturing on the corruption and greed in 19th century California for fourth graders in California history. Let's start with a little background before the main story. David Colton was one of the original Big Four of California. He served as a Southern Pacific Sacramento lobbyist that helped the Big Four, these being Leland Stanford, Mark Hopkins, Thomas Huntington, and Charles Crocker, who created the Central Pacific Railroad Company. However, Colton should be known as the fifth member of the Big Four. His specialty was buying off politicians in the state capital to secure needed votes on measures affecting the Southern Pacific Railroad Company. After David D. Colton's death, his wife gained over $500,000 from the stocks Colton owned. Even though this was a hefty sum, trouble will begin when Mark Hopkins, who had died earlier that same year, had amassed a much more valuable stock portfolio than her husband, even though both men had possessed a comparable amount of shares of stocks. She would get a lawyer and sue the Big Four for $4 million, leading to the court case of Ellen M. Colton versus Leland Stanford et al., in which she showed the Colton letters, showing how her husband had a key role in the Big Four. This was through bribing of congressmen, lawyers, of lower court judges, commissioners, and even a U.S. Supreme Court justice. These letters were very descriptive in nature. They were showing how these men were conspiring with each other, going at it and saying, let's go to this judge, let's go to this commissioner. I believe that if I gave this guy X amount of money, he'll go for us and he'll vote our way to pass this bill. And most of these letters ended with, yeah, this should be thrown away, or those saying that this should be burned. This should never see the light of day. However, Colton's wife would compile these letters, and for 8 years the trial dragged on before a verdict resulted in denying Mrs. Colton any additional money. This court case would end well for the Big Four, however would tarnish the reputation of the railroad company. Because this court case went on for 8 years, this would also be these letters would be published into newspapers, and people would read up and learn about what the railroad company had done and see all of this corruption. In the end, these greedy, corrupt, heartless monsters, Leland Stanford, Mark Hopkins, Thomas Huntington, and Charles Crocker, exploited a widow out of millions. It truly shows the power of greed. If you aren't satisfied with the California history Big Four, you can look into the U.S. history Big Four, these being of their Gilded Age, these being Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, and J.P. Morgan, where you can look into their corruption in U.S. history.